So what I'm going to quickly do is go through the code that I came up with in answer to the question that you were given for the making the code for the random uh, menu selector. So the first thing we need to do is look at the actual task. So here's the task. It's a customer is visiting a restaurant. They want a 3-course meal. 3 courses just means starter, main, dessert. Write a program to suggest a dish for each course. So we're going to have 3 subprograms because it wants me to use subprograms to do this. So I'm going to have one for doing the starter, one for doing the main, one for doing the dessert. It wants me to do a menu, and it wants me to do a random pick from 3 arrays to actually get the starter, main, dessert. It wants me to use the length to find how many things are in the data structures, which means how many are in the array. And it wants me to keep the number of variables as short as possible. So it wants me to do as much as I can inside the subprograms. It wants to have some way of exiting, and it wants to use the techniques to make it easier. The techniques to make it easier just mean that I have to annotate the code as I go, but I'm going to do that verbally so that you can see what it is that's going on. Okay, so let's go back. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what do I need to import. Okay, because I'm going to use random, I have to import ran. So that's what line 4 is doing. This is importing a library. Okay, so I'm importing the library so that I can use the functions that are related to that. I'm going to set up some global variables. The reason I'm using these global variables is I want to actually have a user choice. So it's the same global variables we used before. I have a layout in case I need it. And then I've got this flag equals false. If we go down to my main code, what I'm using the flag for is to make the while loop happen so it keeps repeating until I've finished. But we'll show you that as we get. Okay, so my first subprogram, all I did to make this was copy the one I had before. And I just put the extra things in to say A is starter, B is main, C is dessert, and then X for exit in the program. The next one, the user input choices. What I did with that was I used exactly the same code again. So I'm using pattern recognition to just repeat the same code that I already gave you. And I'm adding on choice A, B, and C to make sure that you've got all the valid choices there. Okay, so when we go down to line 39, this is the first thing I've actually done myself. What I've done is I've made 3 subprograms. I've called them suggest starter, and I've called them suggest main and suggest dessert, so I know exactly what each one is doing. So in the starter array, what I've done is I've said starters equals, and then I've given the choices inside an array. Because this is inside the subprogram, the scope of this starters array is only in the suggest starter subprogram, and it can't be called from everywhere else. So I'm saying that choice, the variable here on line 42, I'm saying choice is going to be what it is I want. So I'm going to use the random library. I'm going to generate a random integer starting at 0, which is my first choice, which will give me choice 1, up to the length of the starters. And there's 1, 2, 3 items in the starter. So this will give me a number between 0 and 2. 0 for choice 1, 1 for choice 2, 2 for choice 3. What I then did was I just copied the exact same code 3 times for the suggest main, suggest dessert. So I've repeated the code. I've changed the numbers slightly so I can see if I'm getting the right answers. So as you can see, I've changed the names of the arrays to main and to dessert. And I've got choice 1C, 2C, 3C. C means it's a dessert. B is going to mean it's a main. And no letter, let's just put some A's in there, will mean that it's a starter that I've chosen. Okay, so the next piece of code is the main section, because I've got all my subprograms set up, including some that I've just copied from somewhere else. So if I was a real programmer, congratulations, you've just paid me to do something that I'd already done. And now we're going on to the main program. So I'm going to say hello, welcome to the random menu maker program. I'm going to set a flag to false so that this will loop from line 60 onwards. So if I minimize that line, you'll see that it'll go from line 60 down to line 71, and it will keep looping around, checking as we go through. I've got a while loop there set to false. I'm going to call the subprogram menu. I'm going to say the user choice, the variable in the main menu that I set right at the top here is nothing, is going to be reset to get user input, which is my menu, which is part of my menu system. So I'm going to get the user input. And then if the user input, the global variable user choice from the get user input subprogram, if that is A, it will suggest starter A. If it's not A, we'll check to see if it's B. If it's B, it will run the subprogram suggest main. If it's not B, it will check see if it's C, and then it will check that. And then the only other option that you can have returned from here is actually X. So if you look at the program here, any choice except X here in line 33 in this subprogram, any choice but X will make it do it again. So this means that any choice that is an A, B, or C that has actually been passed to the main program has to be the X. As soon as it's X, I set my flag to true, which means it drops out of the code and thanks me for using the program. So we need to have a quick look through just to make sure I've done everything that needed doing, and so we can refer to the specific lines. Let's go to the task window. You wanted me to use random.randint. So we've definitely used that because we've used it here in the generator for the starter, for the main, and for the dessert. He wanted me to use the length of the array to find some information. So if we go to here, we can see that I'm using the length of the desserts, I'm using the length of the mains, I'm using the length of the starters. So I've done that. The next thing says he wants me to keep the global variables as short as possible. So if we have a quick look at this, the global variables that I thought I would be using are user's choice, flag, and layout. We haven't actually used layout, so we can remove layout. It wanted me to make sure there's a subprogram for each meal. So we have a subprogram for starters, mains, and dessert. And it wanted me to suggest items until it keeps exiting. That's what the while loop will do. And it wanted me to use techniques to make the program easier to understand. So I've tried to lay it out as easily as possible. One of the things I have forgot to do is label all of my subprograms. So I'll just show you quickly me doing that, just to show you how easy it can be to actually label programs and make code quickly. Let's just quickly do that. If I can remember to stop doing that. And then dessert. We've used the layout given to us by the exam board with importing at the top, global variables, subprograms, etc. all the way down. So it's all laid out nice and easily. And then we've got a message at the end that's saying that the program is finished. So that the program is finished. I've called all the variables by things that are easy to understand, including the word flag to say exactly what it's doing. And I've used all the techniques that we're supposed to use. Okay, so all we need to do now is run the program and see if it works. So I'm going to press run. I'm going to choose A, and I'll get a crash. Okay, this is one of those weird situations where something doesn't work. I'm going to run it again just to make sure, and this time it worked. I think there's something wrong with Rapalit, or it's the number of times we call in some programs. The program does work, and it does give you multiple choices. It's just every now and again it will crash, but then you can run it and use exactly the same options, and it won't run. So A, B, C, and it doesn't work. A, B, C, and it does work. I'm not overly sure why it's doing that. I'll get back to you on that one.